Inflation was rising last year, and this year we are up 5.4% year to date. The scary part, after watching your show, you scared the hell out of me, to be honest with you. One, you start talking about recession. We don't like recession. We always like, things always positively appreciating. I don't want to go backwards, especially on retirements and investments. But the outpacing of wages, that will, put a little more gas on the recession talk. The one thing that scared the hell out of me was where are inflation numbers at historically to 10 years ago and also to the Great Depression. If you go ahead and dive into some of that talk so you can scare me again for the second time today.
Yeah.
Hello there, LabCoatAgents. Shawn Kerley here with the one and only Brian Stevens with the National Real Estate Post. Poor Brian suffering through his second bout of the coronavirus. How are we feeling, buddy?
Like I said, today's the first day I truly feel normal. And I don't want to say one thing here because this whole thing's I'm convinced that this new variant is much more contagious. Everybody in my office, everybody's family in my office, everybody got COVID. In fact, the gentleman who I'm staring at right now, he just had a newborn baby last week, and his newborn baby was born with COVID. As both parents were in the middle of the COVID outbreak. Here's my thing that I want to say though is, for real estate agents and lenders out there, you're self-employed. So you're not you don't have a state job or a county job to where if you get sick, you continue to get paid. You don't have that luxury. So as a real estate agent, take this thing seriously. You got to take care of yourself because if you go down with this thing, you're going to go down for a couple of weeks. And that's a couple of weeks where you're going to, any momentum that you have is going to be gone because there is no talking on the phone. There is nothing. So take care of yourself. This is going to hit self-employed people like real estate agents disproportionately hard. So take care of yourself.
And at least just have a contingency plan of somebody just backing you up if somebody's showing houses or hopefully, listing presentations, things of that nature. But I'm glad that you're feeling better.
Yeah, me too.
Something I don't want to experience, so better you than me, maybe. But no, sorry, I kid. Let's talk about a couple fintech companies today. Sure. There is this one company that basically positions himself. If you go to your smartphone, you click a couple buttons, we can get you $500,000 just by applying online, and that is Rocket Mortgage.
Yeah.
Now they're rolling out. Let's just do it all under one roof. Let's go with Rocket Real Estate. You want to touch a little bit on this new fintech?
But the Rocket Mortgage, the puppy mill of mortgage companies. I guess Rocket wasn't happy just ticking off every mortgage lender in the country. Apparently, they want to tick off every real estate agent too. So that's kind of how I see this whole thing going down. Here's the deal. This is what everybody's doing. Everybody's blurring the lines between real estate and mortgage lending because all these companies see more money on the table. And they're trying to take advantage of the opportunities that they have. And when you have publicly traded companies, a publicly traded company has a legal and moral responsibility, this thing called a fiduciary, right? Mm-hmm. They have a fiduciary to their shareholders. They all do. And not to their clients, not to your clients, not to people in your community. They have a fiduciary to their shareholders. They have a legal obligation to make as much money as humanly possible. So clearly Rocket is looking beyond mortgages and areas where they can grow. And real estate is the logical answer since there's so many other examples of companies blurring the lines between real estate and mortgage lending. The difference here is when you look at Zillow, they're a tech company turned mortgage lender turned real estate company, but they're a tech company first. That's why they're really bad at doing mortgages. And that's why they're failing miserably at selling real estate because they're a tech company. And then when you look at the same thing with Opendoor is a tech company. When you look at OfferPad is a tech company. And this is why they're struggling to do a great job because at their core, they are a tech company and not a real estate or a mortgage company. Then you have companies like the Kellers of the world, who now we have Keller Mortgage. Well, that's a real estate company trying to become a mortgage company. And we see a lot of examples of this as most of the major brands out there, either on a national, a state, or a county level, they have some type of affiliation with a mortgage company. We see lots of examples of real estate companies delving into the mortgage space. I would venture to say that's a harder thing to do. Mortgages and the regulations that guide mortgages are much more strict and complicated as are writing mortgages than writing real estate. So you are taking the easier road and going down the harder road, writing mortgages. The fundamental difference that we're seeing with Rocket is a mortgage company who's going into real estate, and that seems to be an easier route than going the other way around. However, like all the fintech companies, they're going to fail to be great at real estate because they cannot be community-based. Community-based real estating is always going to be better than nationally based real estating, where you're putting a real estate agent in a puppy mill. It's an assembly line approach to real estate. So what they're doing right now is they are hiring real estate agents to work out of their Detroit office to essentially represent people all around the state of Michigan. Well, how in the heck are you going to do that, especially when you don't have a relationship with that client? See, because if I list my house with Rocket Real Estate, I might be speaking with you, the real estate agent today, but the next time I call up, I'm going to be speaking with somebody else, and they're just going to pull my file up to see what the disposition is. I'm not going to have that real estate agent who's in choking distance, who understands the needs and the complications of my file. I'm not going to have that. So by design, they cannot do as well as a traditional real estate brokerage. I want to point this out too, and this is what we've seen. Now, I've always said Rocket Mortgage is a great thing. If I was a mortgage company, if I was a mortgage broker, I would look at Rocket and say, this is wonderful. We love Rocket. Here's the reason why. Anybody who becomes good at mortgages working for Rocket is going to quit. They're going to quit and they're going to go out on their own. And I would look at Rocket Mortgage like my AA baseball team. Or AAA baseball team. You get somebody who's good enough who can hit 300, you bring them up to the big leagues. Same thing with Rocket Mortgage. You get somebody who actually is really good at doing mortgages at Rocket, bring them to the big leagues, and recruit that person to have their own personal business where they can make more money and offer more competitive interest rates. On the flip side of that is people who fail, who are not good at things, they go to these puppy mill approaches where they get a guaranteed paycheck. They're not going to make as much money. They're going to work 9 to 5. They're going to punch a clock, but gone is the independence for a real estate agent or a mortgage lender. So what type of real estate agent is going to go to Rocket Real Estate? It's going to be a real estate agent who's, by and large, failed at real estate and working on their own. Either they don't have the hustle, the fortitude, the understanding, the discipline, all of these things that are required in to be a great real estate agent. They don't have those things. That's why they're going to go work there. You will never find a successful real estate agent who's going to go work for Rocket Real Estate. Why would you? There's more money and better service having your own personal business. So not only are you going to have the distance problem, not only are you going to have the assembly line puppy mill problem, but the agents that you're going to get are essentially going to be failed agents. That's how I see this whole thing. So will it work? Well, I mean, they've got billions of dollars and they're definitely going to throw money at it. And when you throw money at things that, that could cover for a lot of mistakes, can it? And so we'll see. I mean, we see the same thing with all these other companies as well. I mean, when you look at Open Door, when you look at, Zillow to a differing degree, but what you get is you essentially get failed real estate agents. That's what you get.
Yeah, and and at the end of the road is normally a lot of heartburn for the people that want to save on commissions paid out to a professional, because you are getting a discounted commission payout. A lot of times you're going to get a discounted service as well. So no, I get that. It'll be interesting. It always is in this industry, and the only thing that's ever constant is change. So we'll see what happens there. Let's talk about our other favorite fintech company, Zillow.
Awesome.
So Zillow rolls out the Ibuyer. They're just slinging money for real estate, just trying to pick up market share. But they come out and they basically lose a bunch of money with this strategy. Go ahead and touch on how Zillow, how much they're losing on the Ibuyer program, but how they're still turning a profit, because it's interesting to see that people are still utilizing this platform.
Isn't it interesting to see that Zillow, who is charging more money, paying less on for these properties, is still finding a way to lose money by basically treating real estate like a pawn shop, buy low, sell high. It's what it is. Zillow is the pawn shop of real estate companies. That's what they're doing. That's what iBuying is. When you think about like iBuying, there's only two ways to make money. You either buy the property at a discounted price. Who in their right mind would do that in this market? Evidently, there's people who are taking less money for their properties.
Yeah.
When you could list with a traditional real estate agent and have your house sell in 24 hours and make more money than you would ever make by listing your house with Zillow. Yet they're selling their houses at discounted prices. And the other thing is fees. Just stack up the fees, change the names, confuse people, and charge more in fees than any traditional real estate agent. With that said, buying houses at discounts and charging more than any real estate agent, they're still finding a way to lose money. Isn't that remarkable? And we just heard this from their last quarterly reports. We know that they are losing money buying and selling and flipping homes. Where they're making their money and why they're still profitable is from their premier agent platform. Oddly enough, the thing that's getting these guys through right now is charging real estate agents for leads. And they charge huge, hefty amounts. There's two forms of their premier agent, depending on what market you're in. You're paying for the lead, or you are giving part of your commission over to Zillow for deals that you're closing. Either way, what always strikes me with Zillow is, for real estate agents, I wish you would understand this. Like, if Zillow just disappeared tomorrow, just disappeared, just magically poof, do you realize that every house that sells with Zillow here would still sell with Zillow gone? Every house. Like, there's no need for Zillow. Like, every single house that has sold over the past decade would have sold without Zillow being here. That's a fact. We don't need Zillow, yet you choose to pay Zillow. Now, I find this interesting. Like, if I was undermining you personally, okay, I was doing something that was going to undermine you and your family, okay, would you pay me money to undermine you and your family? Like, would you do it? See, because
I would hope not.
here's what's happening in a lot of markets, and if it's not there yet, it's coming to a market near you. It is coming to you. But when you pay Zillow, we now know this. The only way they're making money is from their premier agent platform. When you pay Zillow, you are financing their endeavors to compete against you on those listings that you otherwise would get. You are paying for your competition to take a listing that you should get. That would be better for your community. So now that we know this from the quarterly reports from Zillow, and now that we know that every house that sold, has sold, would have sold without Zillow, if you guys just quit paying Zillow, they would disappear. They would simply disappear. Here's the other thing to think about too. Now, this is all fine and dandy with property values going up and Zillow going out there and taking listings that you would otherwise get. But let's just assume that eventually the market that we're in changes, because all markets change. They all do. I don't care. This irrational exuberance in real estate right now is going to change. It will. And when it does, how does Zillow maintain its iBuyer? How does any of these fintech companies maintain their iBuying platforms? Because there's a built-in assumption that property values are always going to go up. And the minute that they don't go up, none of these platforms are sustainable. Yet as a traditional real estate agent, if property values go down, are you still in business? Well, you bet your ass you are, right? Because real estate agents are built, we are designed for good markets and bad markets. That's what we do. In fact, you could make an argument that real estate agents are even more important in a declining market. That's when we take our skills and our abilities to get top dollars for these properties in a market that is otherwise hard to sell a house. It's going to happen again. These fintech companies and these platforms, they're not designed for that. They will disappear when that happens. Yeah. My thing is why don't we just kind of rush this along by having all of you quit paying Zillow right now? That would be super awesome.
Yeah. Well, and we saw what happened when there was some turbulence last year. What happened to all the fintech companies? They just hit pause or turn the lights off. And yeah, and you know, to the folks' defense that use it, still internet leads are not the easiest to convert, you know, normally 1 to 3% on a good time. So if people are going to those websites, Zillow, Realtor, those leads convert a lot easier than say Facebook or Instagram or you know, others. So I could see why they still want to, but it's one of those where it's like not looking past your own nose for the commission and what's going to happen tomorrow. But you know, there's pros and cons in each and every. I just love that they're blowing cash buying houses. I would like for them to go away. Let's switch gears now. Sure. I mean, I'm assuming you go to the supermarket sometimes and you buy eggs, you buy milk, you buy gas, whatever. Inflation was rising last year. And this year we are up 5.4% year to date. The scary part, after watching your show, you scared the hell out of me, to be honest with you. One, you start talking about recession. We don't like recession. We always like, things always positively appreciating. I don't want to go backwards, especially on retirements and investments. But the outpacing of wages, that will, put a little more gas on the recession talk. The one thing that scared the hell out of me was where are inflation numbers at historically to 10 years ago and also to the Great Depression. You go ahead and dive into some of that talk so you can scare me again for the second time today.
Yeah. So I started looking, 5.6% inflation year over, and this is a big number. And, but I'm like, well, 5.6% doesn't seem that big, to me. Now, I will tell you this, I'm somebody who I'm pretty oblivious to. When I go to the grocery store, I don't really look at prices. I look at what I'm getting, but in this past few months, I am noticing it's a trip. I'm like, wow, things seem more expensive. We have this place called Crab in a Bag. And I'm telling you, it's the greatest thing in the world. You get a bag full of crab and shrimp and potatoes and corn and sausage and crawdads and, clams and all that stuff. And it's just insanely good. So I would go there and I'll spend $150 and get a bag like this and bring it home, and you just dump the whole thing on the table, and then everybody has at it. And it's kind of a luxury, right? For me. Yep. So my friend came up and I went and did the same thing, crab in a bag, spent my $150. Well, my bag of crab is about half the size as it was 6 months ago. I thought, well, that's kind of crazy, but that is inflation. That's what's taking place. So when you hear like 5.6% year over, you're like, well, that doesn't seem that big, even if you're kind of feeling it. So I decided to take a step back and start looking at historical trends of inflation over the past 25 years. And so I went to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, so this is a federal government site that tracks inflation. So when I looked at the past 18 months, our inflation went it literally tracks like this. Boom. I'm like, wow, it's very, very pronounced. So over an 18-month period, it's quite remarkable how bad it is. So then I took a step back even further and I looked at a 10-year period, and it goes like this. Boom. So what we're seeing right now since COVID and the first $1 trillion payout, remember all that free money that we got so you guys could go get TVs and shit like that? Well, that's why we have this this knock on inflation, which is going up. So then I took a step back further. I went 5 years, I went 10 years, I went 25 years. And if I go back, you look at the last 25 years, there's only one period in the past 25 years that saw the same spike in inflation that we're currently seeing right now. And that was in the run up to the Great Recession, which was the largest turn down of our economy since the Great Depression. It's quite remarkable what took place in 2008. The only time is in the run up to that recession in 2008. So if we are just to look at the potential for a recession in the context of inflation as being an indicator, and it is a good indicator for it, then you could draw no other conclusion than we are certainly going to have a recession. That's the only thing that you can draw, because you see all these bumps, whoop, big one, 2008, and whoop, big one now. And here's the other part of it, guys. Listen, I'm not casting any judgment. I don't care if you're for it or against it. I'm simply making an observation. If that $1.5 trillion handout that we just got, and I get it. I understand why we need it. I'm okay with it. But just understand that there's consequences for everything we do. There are unintended consequences and there's intended consequences. That we see inflation because we printed over $1 trillion and handed it out to everybody in the country. We are about to spend 3.5 trillion more. Okay. And if $1 trillion did this to inflation, what is 3.5? Actually, to be honest, it's 4.5 trillion. What is 4.5 trillion more going to do to inflation? And we can only draw one conclusion. The bump that we're seeing right now is going to be small fries next to what's going to happen 12 months from now after we spent 4.5 trillion.
Yeah,
thanks. And again, I'm not saying that inflation is the only. I'm not saying that inflation is the only indicator that for a recession, but it certainly is one of them, and it's something that I think that we collectively need to understand. If we do this, there's a high probability that we are going to go into a recession. And there's a and there's absolute certainty that every single thing that you purchase is going to be even more expensive 12 and 24 months from now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate you again. I'm going to call you something else as soon as we get off this call. Getting back to the grocery store, I was doing some shopping and I put some things in the cart and I go to check out and I look and that'd be $220. I'm like, there's not a lot of things in the cart. Why? No, where's everything at? It's not like I had some really, really cool stuff, chicken breasts and things like that, but it's amazing. And I'm the same type of shopper where I just pick things and throw it in, and then we'll just see what the damage is at the end. Now it's like, okay, no, we don't need that brand stuff. We can go off brand. And
I got one for you. Listen to this. So I just drove my daughter down to San Diego. So I live in Northern California. So that's a 600-mile drive. So I stopped right before, it's called the Grapevine, and that's the hill that you have to go over before you drop into the Los Angeles basin. So I gassed up right before I went into Los Angeles after having driven 300 miles. Guess how much gas was?
Well, in California, you guys are just getting raked over the coals. It's like over $4, isn't it? A gallon?
$5.80. It was $5.80 a gallon. I'm not kidding you. It was $5.80 a gallon. I'm like, and that was just for the middle grade. That wasn't even like the good one.
Yeah. And I'm bitching at $2.79 over here in the middle of the States.
$5.80, dude.
So let's switch it up one more time and talk about something maybe positive, but you may blow a hole into that side. Scotsman Guide puts out today, and they've been reporting on this, that CoreLogic's throwing out delinquency rates are down on mortgage payment. So there's less people that are late on their mortgage than there were prior. And they're predicting that the mass foreclosure hit in Q3, Q4, or even into next year is probably not going to be there. One, because there's less people late on their mortgage, so less people that go into foreclosure. And then also because of what you talked about earlier, houses are so positively appreciated, they could sell if they do run into a problem.
Sure.
But I'm sure you have, the other side of, or something along the lines that you say, hey, maybe there's some other tidbits to this.
You just think I'm a cynic. And by the way, you know what a cynic is? A cynic is a person who knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not a cynic. The truth of the matter is, in almost every market across the country, there are still a few depressed markets. Newark, New Jersey, there's a couple of cities up in Connecticut. There's still a couple of communities that aren't doing well in terms of property appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, go figure, those communities are going to be tough too. But by and large, everywhere in the country, property values, 12 to 24% appreciation year over. It would be very hard for somebody to face a foreclosure right now. And and actually, that's not true. People will face foreclosures. And I think there's a study that was done by the National Association of Realtors. The average cost of a foreclosure is $76,000. Mm-hmm. The average cost to bring a mortgage current is like $8,000. I mean, the numbers are drastic. So I think because the cost of a foreclosure is so expensive, most of those who are behind, who aren't going to be able to get caught up for a litany of reasons, can go ahead and sell their house and realize a profit, put that money in the bank, live to fight another day, when your employment comes back full time, So I think a lot of people are going to have to sell their houses because there are still or underemployed people. And with these inflationary numbers that we're seeing right now, where things are more expensive, it takes our discretionary funds and it really limits how we can spend it, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So some of those mortgages are going to become much more difficult for people to make. I think most of those folks will sell their houses. We've had this conversation before. When you look at all the people who are currently behind on their mortgage or in a forbearance or in their second round of forbearance or having re-entered forbearances, and the numbers are pretty striking here. I think real estate agents have a responsibility to their community to actually reach out to folks and say, hey, listen, if you're behind on your mortgage right now, you should sell it, realize the profit, live to fight another day. Do it because it helps that person and it helps your community when you're not dealing with foreclosures. So I think we have a responsibility to our communities as real estate agents. So I don't think we're going to see a wave of foreclosures. What I do think we're going to see is we're going to see a wave of inventory. And that's a good thing because no matter how much inventory we get, we are still woefully behind in terms of the number of properties that we need for new family formations. I mean, we're just woefully behind. So we will never get to a point, well, never is a bet, strike that. It would be very difficult for us to get to a point to where our inventory is outpacing demand for properties. We might see a leveling off of prices. I don't think we're going to see a drop in prices. And I think some of this inventory would be a needed relief for our communities and great opportunities for real estate agents who are going to, run with this one. There's enormous numbers of people in every community all across the country who need to sell their house. But here's what happens. We know what human nature is. And we know this from 2008. People will put their heads in the sand and they will wait till the sheriff shows up and knocks on the door. We know that to be true. And when that happens, that means your credit has been just destroyed. You're probably going to lose your house. There's a chance that you're going to have to pay the $70,000. Why is it $70,000? Well, because you have legal fees, you have your mortgage fees, you have your back interest. I mean, these numbers, and I'll tell you right now, when you have a foreclosure, don't think for a second that the bank isn't going to stack up fees on you.
Yeah.
So yes, that's going to happen to some folks. I don't think we'll see a ton of it. I would like to see more initiative from real estate agents reaching out to folks, because there are people in every community right now who are behind on their mortgage and they're not going to be able to bring these things current, despite all the changes that we've made to forbearances in terms of if somebody can make the payment, if they can't make the payment, if they can make a partial payment. We've rolled out the red carpet to keep people in homes who should otherwise get rid of them. Yeah. In spite of all those things that we've done, there's still going to be quite a few folks who are going to have to sell their homes. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I mean, right now, the getting's still good for people to sell. And what may change that last talking point is that there's a lot of talking heads at the Fed stating that they're going to start tapering quantitative easing. And what quantitative easing is, Big Brother buying mortgage-backed securities to artificially keep interest rates low. If they turn off the spigot and stop buying this, and it's more to open market, then you'll see interest rates go up and up and up. I don't know exactly where it'll end, but I know that an interest rate now is better with Big Brother buying MBS securities compared to them not. And if my affordability or my interest rate goes up from whatever it is to a point higher, a point and a half, then my affordability goes away. And that's whenever you all will see that I can't put out that big number to overpay for that house. My max is this, and it may start bringing values down. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking if they do taper?
Well, you hit it on the head. So when we hear that, the Fed, raised or lowered rates, we assume that has a lot to do with mortgages, but it has nothing to do with mortgages. They can raise or lower rates, and it's going to effectively, well, it has very, very little effect on mortgage interest rates. And with rates at or near zero, which is where they're currently at, the Fed's can't lower rates anymore. So how do we keep interest rates lower? How does the Fed keep interest rates lower? It's not from raising and lowering rates. It's from buying mortgage-backed securities. And so if you look at the Fed's balance sheet, it's really kind of interesting. Like, how many mortgage-backed securities did they buy 10 years ago? The answer is none. Mm-hmm. So like their balance sheet goes like this, and then it just goes woo, straight through the roof. The Feds are buying almost all mortgage-backed securities right now. And because they're doing that, it's keeping rates lower than what they otherwise would be. And this is quantitative easing, if we were to back away from this policy and have the Fed quit buying mortgage-backed securities, the interest rates would have to go up, because right now at their current rates, there's not a huge interest in the private sector to go get a rate of return of 2%. There's not. Mm-hmm. So what would happen is rates would go up to bring in those private money investors. The rate that they would look at before we would get people off the fence would probably be a point or two higher than what rates currently are at. So if the Fed quits buying, that means we're expecting the private sector to come in and buy these mortgage-backed securities. There's no appetite with rates where they're at. If we raise rates, then we get those guys off the fence. So that effectively means that our rates would go from the high 2s to the mid 4s. Mm-hmm. Now, what would happen if we went from the high 2s to the mid 4s right now? Well, it would take a lot of people out of the market, wouldn't it? I mean, it would limit people's ability to purchase houses. So demand would drastically fall off. And when we talk about inflation, when you have a mortgage and you had a rate of 4.5%, and then your mortgage lender refinanced you down to 2.75%, that is a hedge against inflation, isn't it? Because what that lender is doing is it's freeing up money for that homeowner so they can go ahead and offset the cost of inflation, which is going to be more expensive durable goods. So having rates low is a very effective hedge against inflation, which is going to keep our economy going. If rates were to go back up, not only would it slow down what's happening in the housing sector, but that hedge against inflation wouldn't be there. And now that we know that inflation is going to keep ticking up even further, if we saw mortgage rates going up and we lost the ability to refinance the 40% of people who still have rates in the fours right now, it could be very difficult for our economy. Because of that, I don't think that the Fed is going to be able to back away from buying mortgage-backed securities anytime in the near future. And the main reason for it is what my entire office just went through. This whole COVID thing. Like, we don't know how, like I'm hearing some numbers are going up again, and you're starting to hear, everyone's masking up again. And, you're going to start looking at, maybe limited seating in places or locking certain areas down that are hotspots. We don't know, I don't know, you don't know, but because that's still on the table out there, I don't think the Fed can make any drastic move right now and back away from mortgage-backed securities.
Yeah, and the talk is that they may crank it down or turn it off about 10%, but whenever 10% of billions of dollars, that's still a huge number. And you gave me a head scratcher. This is probably a couple months ago, whenever you said, the United States government backs every loan that is underwritten, with FHA, with VA, with conventional, they own it all. And so they're on the hook for it. So I don't know. We'll see. It's always interesting, and there's nothing ever that's constant. Like I said, the only thing that's ever constant is change, and we'll see what tomorrow brings for sure. So,
hey, like I said, if you have a mortgage, congratulations, you're living in government housing.
Yeah, yes, that's what it was.
Where's my block of cheese?
Yes. Nice. All right, my man. Well, again, I'm glad to hear that you're feeling better. I was sorry to hear that you got hammered the second time, and for a lot of the fun videos that Frank and Brian put on with the National Real Estate Post, it's as easy as downloading their mobile app, put it on your smartphone, and get their daily fun videos every day. They cover all this type of content, and I appreciate your guys' effort after all these years.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you too. We got better days in front of us, man. Better days in front of us.
That's right. See you later.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.